We do have a big number coming up right now, though. ADP private payroll data just hitting the wires, and Steve Leisman is here with those numbers. Steve.
Minus 32,000 versus an estimate of 45,000. Put an asterisk on that. We're going to explain why that's lower than expected in just a second. The goods sector down 3,000. The service sector down 28,000. The non-farm payroll estimate for Friday is 51,000. Now, this number here that you saw was a result in part of ADP incorporating those recent big revisions from the BLS in terms of their April to March 2025 numbers. So August was 54,000. That's now been revised down to minus 3,000 as part of an incorporation of a new growth rate in the job market that ADP picked up from the benchmark revision. So September minus 32 would have been plus 11 without those revisions. But this is the new reality. This is the new growth rate. Okay, now let's look back to the report here. What happened? Small business down 40, medium business down 20, but large business still hiring, according to this report, up 33,000. By sector, education, health services still really leading and showing the way, up 33,000. Natural resources and mining, 4,000. And you can see there the big decline there, leisure and hospitality down 19,000 on the month. Job stayers in terms of wages, 4.5%. Job changers, though, up just 6.6%. That's considerably down from August, which was 7.1%, led by leisure and hospitality and financial activities. We're lucky here to have the Squawk Box acting BLS commissioner, Neil Richardson.
Oh, wow.
Who we've now, at least for us, well, in the absence of a government, I believe we can do that, right? We can name anybody we want, right? And that's
like
now,
a recess appointment.
Exactly. Because this show is really recess, right, Joe?
Kind of.
You out there playing in the playground.
I don't think it's happening.
Yeah. For this 5-minute segment, I will be only representing ADP. So.
Can I tell you, we can do a lot worse than have Neil Richardson as BLS commissioner.
I don't think she wants it.
No, I wouldn't either.
Neil, let me ask you, the revisions from the government, I'm a little surprised that that played into what you all do. I thought you all kind of ran your own numbers, you looked at it your own way, but you do take government numbers into account for what you come out with?
Yeah, so it's very important to be clear on this point. What we do is what the BLS does with their survey data, which is annually we re-benchmark it to the truth. And in the United States, that truth comes from all the workers that are covered by employment insurance regulation by the states. The BLS serves as an aggregator to these employment numbers. They are basically a near census of all the workers in the United States, with one caveat. Why don't we just look at the QCEW and throw away ADP and BLS? Well, the problem with it is that it comes out with a 6-month lag. So every year, ADP re-benchmarks to this source of the truth that is complete but lagged by 6 months. And so what you're seeing from us, what you're seeing from the BLS is an estimate, an indicator of what this benchmark will look like in 6 months. And so this is a statistical process. It's really important. But what I want the viewers to understand is that the narrative remains the same. There has been a slowdown in the hiring momentum from the beginning of the year to where we are now. And that is consistent whether you look at the re-benchmark numbers, which Steve just shared today, or without the benchmark, whether you look at ADP or what you'll see in the BLS is a slowing of hiring momentum based on where we are in the economy.
Neela, I get that, and I hope viewers get that at home. The question becomes, and sometimes we don't, it's a silly thing to care if something's on either side of the zero line. But in this case, when it's jobs and it's negative, the narrative of the slowdown may be the same, but does it matter more now that we seem to be losing jobs?
Of course it matters.
Right.
It matters. And so this is a month. We have to look at the trend. So we've seen the weakness for 2 months in a row. We're going to be looking forward to see if that trend holds through the end of the year. But we have to caveat it with other data, not just these numbers. So what have we seen in other data? First of all, we've seen very low initial jobless claims, which means that this is still a low hire, or no hire in this case, but also a low fire jobs market. That's very important. The second important other data point that we have to weave in here is Q2 growth rates for the economy as a whole. So that GDP number was strong. It was robust in the second quarter. The question is, will that growth that was based on consumer spending... And it is continuing,
by the way. We have the tracking numbers for third quarter are surprisingly... I was very, by the way, moved by the Contessa Brewer's report about Carnival bookings up 26, booking healthily into 27. Casinos are doing well. It's hard to see the consumer flat on their back when they're basically taking cruises and gambling at the casinos.
So consumer spending is the backbone of the economy, and more so now than ever. It's really driving that growth. But the question in my mind as a labor economist is that consumer spending strong enough and broad-based enough, and that's an important caveat as well, to support job growth? We know it's supporting economic growth, but is it supporting labor market growth? Right now, we're not seeing it.
Can I just interrupt here real quickly, guys? If you could put up the 10-year...
Yeah, exactly. Go for it. Interrupt. No one was saying anything. Okay. You hit stop. Then.
All right. Well, then I'm going to go ahead then.
Okay, go ahead.
Right? Okay. Take a look at the 10-year. It did seem to take a little bit of a leg down here.
Yeah, we were at 416.
410 we had. We were at 414.
Yes, that's significant. That's 6 basis points.
4, 5, 6 basis points. And I can't do this on the fly, but I'm guessing that the outlook for the Fed funds futures has also declined. We know the Fed, you may not have wanted this to happen, we know the Fed gets this data. You guys remember? You guys don't remember this. It was a bit of a kerfuffle. In a footnote to one of his speeches, Fed Governor Waller revealed that the Fed is getting this ADP data even more granular than we get it.
Really?
What
do they know that we don't know?
Well, they get a little bit more granular, and ADP didn't, I think,
explain what it was.
Nobody really, no, they did. No, they didn't really want this to be necessarily public. So it is out there now that the Fed does watch this data. So if the question is the Fed flying blind in this shutdown? It's not. It's going to be looking at this ADP data.
Let me just add an amendment to that. And that is, I thought that was the case. The Fed was going to be watching this data much more closely. Is there any effect to your data gathering if the government shut down? Any of those inputs, does that hurt what you're doing?
Yeah. If the BLS does not put out their report on Friday, it doesn't change our next report because we are not reliant on survey data. Okay. This is an independent measure.
That's why I was confused by the revisions with the government and taking that into account, because I thought you guys just completely ignored it.
And that is true. The BLS relies on their estimate of the QCEW, of the truth benchmark. They rely on survey data from the CES survey. And so these are independent measures. The raw data that goes into these reports are very different, and they're independent.
What does the Fed know that we don't in terms of granularity?
You know, if I could sit in that room, I could have a complete answer.
No, I just mean in terms of the ADP granularity.
You know, the Fed has been vocal in minutes, in official documents. They've actually published research using ADP data, so it wasn't a secret. And what we try to do at ADP is provide this data to the public so you can see what we see, which is a private sector hiring momentum that is slowed. So we're trying to capture in a bottle, in an index, what we're seeing on the ground with our clients.
That's a totally different question. Let's say the BLS didn't exist, and you wanted to create or recreate what the BLS actually does or has through third parties and whatnot. You are a third party to some degree. That's what it is. Could enough people put together any kind of something through third-party data that would actually get you to something that either approximates the BLS to the extent you believe the BLS is the truth serum?
Not with the ingredients we have now. First of all, ADP is missing 15 to 20% maybe of employment when it comes to the government sector, the federal sector. So that's really, really important to have because those federal workers are also the segue into contract workers, which come from the private sector. So there is a bridge there that is not going to be captured just by private sector data alone. So this report is meant to be independent, yes, but it's also meant to be a complement to government statistics. It's not meant to replace it.
There's no replacing the total counting of the population and the total number of people working. And this gets a little more granular than probably we want, but one of the things that ADP does is they have a natural growth rate of employment among their clients, which is higher than the average because they're a self-selecting. So they have to readjust down their growth rate to more correctly reflect what's happening in the economy.
Neela, one more question. You all focus on private payrolls. Government, obviously, is a big question mark this time around. You're so close to the government jobs report. I assume that that's because government, more often than not, is fairly stable. What happens if there's a big change in the government numbers? How would you capture that? How would you reflect it, or could you?
If there's a big change in federal jobs?
Yeah, just what they're threatening with now would be additional layoffs, not furloughs.
Yeah, I would be looking at how that affects private sector employment. So a lot of people who work in the federal government are contractors. So think about cafeteria workers or janitorial workers. If they don't work, they don't get paid. There's no sense of furlough or back pay. Right. So that is going to show up in the private sector numbers. That is going to be an indication of what's going on, even though we can't see with perfection what's going on in federal hiring and layoffs. We can see the knock-on effects in terms of the private sector.
Is there any way that we're missing a reacceleration of the labor market right now, in your view?
Well, let's look to see where there were bright spots. We saw large companies are hiring. Even in this downbeat jobs report, they were positive. They were positive in information technology and in healthcare.
So if you had to guess, reaccelerating or not hit bottom yet?
I think I would need another couple of months to make that call. I really would.